Joined now by our draft insider. He's the director of film scouting for Elite Prospects, and he'll be with us here through this month covering yet another NHL entry draft. How you doing, Cam Robinson?
Happy off-season to you, Cam.
Yeah. My off-season doesn't kick in until about July 2nd, but we're getting there anyways. They're getting there. Yeah.
We wanted to bring you on, buddy, because it's come to light through reports that the Vancouver Canucks took 5 different prospects out to dinner at last week's NHL scouting combine. So let's just run through them with your capsules here and your ranking in the EP rankings. We'll start with the local kid, Zac Benson, the winger from the Winnipeg Ice.
Yeah, my favorite of the group by a significant margin for sure. So I've got him number 5 on my board. We have him number 5 at EP Rinkside. Throughout the season, there was kind of a lot of talk about the big 3 or the big 4, if you want to include Matthew Mishkov. Zac Benson, I think there's an argument to be made that it's a big 5, that he's that good. He is arguably the smartest player in this crop, rivaling Connor Bedard. My colleague Mitch Brown manually tracks data, and he possessed the best playmaking profile of anyone since Connor McDavid. And so his playmaking is through the roof. He has an excellent motor, really good hands. The shot is there. The only problem is he's a little undersized and he's not a burner. And so teams obviously take note of that. When you're 5'9" and you don't have elite speed, straightaway speed, then it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle for you. But when you're that smart, he can anticipate plays so well, so he can get a jump on things. He uses his brain to pre-plan routes. He has the hands that he can work to set up his dekes or his passes or his shot. Honestly, maybe he ends up on the wing. And that's kind of the bridge that they have to cross, whoever drafts him, is to make him a successful player. But maybe he doesn't. Maybe he could still manage to be that player in the middle of the ice in the NHL just because he's so smart and he's so skilled.
He's Langley born, played at the Yale Hockey Academy, so a lot of local roots here before moving on to Winnipeg for his major junior career. A lot of helium, a lot of buzz about this Swedish right-shot defenseman, Tom Willander. Cam, what can you tell us about him?
Yeah, I like Willander too, and I've liked him in kind of the 20 to 35 range for much of the season, just for what he is. He's a really strong defensive defenseman who skates really, really well. He's on the right side. He played some pro minutes this year, but I've come around more on maybe that offensive upside that's kind of been hidden under there. Obviously, he had the tremendous U18s, which has really elevated him up a lot of draft boards, especially because this class is a little light on D prospects. But man, he skates so beautifully, and he's got a bit of nasty to his game. He plays hard, and he's got pushback, and he's a little dirty at times too, at the front of the net, in the corners, after the whistle. So he's not the biggest guy. He's not small, but he's not a giant out there. But he plays a hard-nosed game too, with that great mobility. I've got him number 12 on my board. EP Rinkside as a team, we ranked him as 30. Our Swedish guy didn't love him as much. We had a little back and forth there, but we ended up having him in our first round anyways. But I'm higher. I've come around late in the year to really push him up the board and get him in that top 15. I think he's a viable option for Vancouver at 11.
Let's go back to local kids, Matthew Wood, and his ability to push up this high to the Canucks area, because not everybody's got him in that vicinity. What do you think?
Yeah, so I've got him 14. We put him at 16 at EP. So it's a funny one because, after his draft -1, he looked like he was going to be a top 10 player for sure. Mm-hmm. Big, skillful guy, played down the middle of the ice. Obviously going to UConn as a draft eligible was going to be a bit of an uphill battle for him too, is that when you're a true freshman, it's hard to produce. And he produced really, really well. Again, the knock on him though is the feet. They're a bit sluggish. The reason I have him still in my top 15, because I don't love big, slow players too often, but he actually improved on his skating throughout the season, which shows me that he has an understanding of what needs to be corrected, a willingness to get there, and to do it throughout the season. That's difficult to do when there's so many other things going on that you have to focus on. So the fact that he took a step forward with his skating throughout the year, it buoys my hope that he could be a player one day. Another one that's like a tweener. Is he a center? Is he a winger? We'll see. But I think whoever drafts him will try to pigeonhole him down the middle because of that size skill package.
There's a lot of C's written beside players in the top 15, but how many of them are actual C's though? That's the thing, right? And we say this every year with the draft, but in particular this year, particularly for the high end, I don't know how many of these guys are tried and true centers.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of them that you look at that you can assume are probably going to move over to the wing. Like, a kid like Ryan Leonard hasn't played center in a year and a half. Riley Height is probably going to be a winger in the show. Bradley Nadeau is probably going to be a winger in the show. So there's a lot of these guys that play down the middle in junior or tier 2 junior that they'll be sliding over when they probably even they get to college here.
Nate Danielson, center.
Yeah, I was going to say our next guy I think is a legitimate center, Cam. But you tell me.
Yeah, he's probably a center. He's probably the lowest ceiling of this group. Actually, I strongly believe that he's the lowest ceiling guy, but he's maybe the safest of the bunch. Willander too, but of the forwards, he's probably the safest. He has some pretty strong two-way habits at this point. Got great speed off the arc on the rush. Not very creative. Doesn't boast really plus hands or anything like that. Can't set up his shots with too much creativity. He's kind of a meat and potatoes, straight ahead type of player. I really had a hard time falling in love with him this season because I know a lot of teams really do like him and they think that this guy's like, hey, this is a number 2 center. I see a number 3 center if everything breaks right, which isn't anything wrong with that. A quality 3C is very valuable, but I rank him 23. We put him at 28 at EP ringside, so I'm even a little bit higher than the rest of the crew. He just seems like kind of a low ceiling, safer player that I wouldn't be super excited about if Vancouver leaned that way, especially after last year where they went after probably like the quintessential high upside boomer bust pick with Jonathan Lekiramaki, and then to go kind of for a low ceiling guy, it kind of break the mold a bit.
The more I read about Colby Barlow, the more I like him, and I love reading that he's pretty much maxed out physically and might play in the NHL soon and has good detail and two-way to his game. That all said, he's a winger, but you tell me, Cam, what do you make of Barlow?
I really like Colby Barlow. I don't know if he fits the Vancouver pipeline all that well. I've got him 16. We had him 17 at EP. Great shooter, obviously. He was second in the CHL for draft eligibles behind Connor Bedard. I think he tallied 46 this year. He can score from distance. He can get into the hard areas. He kills penalties. He was the captain of his team there as a draft eligible. He won Scholastic Player of the Year in the CHL, so he's got big brains on him too. I've heard nothing but good things about his character and his work ethic. Now, being maxed out physically, I know he's got the man-sized beard. But, he's only playing at 185 right now. And, he's 6'1", maybe 6'2". I think that there's, 15, 20 pounds there that he could be packing onto him when he's a prime age player. So he could be a load to handle. Again, the feet aren't great. They're maybe about average. He really reminds me of like Tyler Toffoli, that type of player who can play in a bunch of different situations for you, move around the lineup, score some big goals, maybe have a career year where he goes off for 35, 40 and goes a PPG, but otherwise more likely a 25, 30 goal guy in the mid 50s, maybe a 60 point level on the regular, but can bring some other intangibles for you throughout your top 9.
But back to your original comment, is that the kind of player, nice player to have in your pipeline? But when you've got maybe what you hope to be your last top 12 pick for a while, like if all goes according to plan for the Canucks, to their plan, they're in the playoffs, they're out of the top 12. This is your last chance to pick in the top dozen. Do you go with a winger?
Blake, there's a plan?
Yeah, there might be. Small P. Yeah. Small P.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, right? That's the big question mark there. Is he is not a center. He hasn't played center in any of the views I've seen over the last 2 years. Maybe he played it in Pee Wee or something like that, but he is a tried and true winger coming off the rush with that shot. Man, he can get it off though. Like it's almost Bedard like how quickly he can get his drag and release. It can be a rocket too. So he's gonna score some goals. He's gonna be a fun player. I think he's gonna fit in really well into a dressing room and potentially wear a C one day. So it wouldn't be the worst pick at 11. I think for Vancouver that they're definitely gonna lean right side D or center though. So if one of those guys that they like is in that spot, I think they jump over Barlow.
Before we get off these guys, this particular group, can we talk about, can I ask you the importance of dinner? What are you hearing from the prospects? Like, how much does dinner matter? And I don't mean like the particular restaurant or, the budget allowed.
That is the reporting that's missing here. What kind of restaurant did they take because if you're taking Wood to the local Applebee's, but you're taking Danielson to the steakhouse, hey?
Right.
That's a good point.
But like, do a lot of teams take a lot of guys for dinner? How prevalent is dinner here?
It's one of 3 squares every day.
Talk to us about dinner, Cam.
It's an important meal, boys. You gotta get your greens in there early. But it's funny because I talked to a kid last year in the last class about going out for dinner with the team, and he said it was pretty nerve wracking, like even coming down to the decision on what to order, right? Because it feels like it's all
Everything's
a
being
combine.
evaluated.
Yes.
Exactly right.
Yes.
They give you these mental tests in the combine interviews, and all of a sudden you're like, I'll have the chicken wings, and they're like, oh, they're writing something down, you know?
Surf and turf. Oh, this guy thinks he's arrived already.
Wings.
Right?
I mean, well,
in
Buffalo.
better be extra spicy, anyways. Yeah, but no, I think it's important for these kids.
Does it denote actual interest, do you think, or is it cursory? Is it just, oh, he's available, we might as well? Does it denote real interest, do you think?
I think it denotes real interest for the most part. I think that there is a little bit of gamesmanship there sometimes too, and that there can be some smoke screens put out, especially when you're higher up in the draft and you're wondering, teams are wondering, they're seeing who's going out for dinner too, and they're like, okay, so they're game planning around it as well. So I think there's a bit of game playing at times. Often teams will only take 2 or 3 players out for dinner, the ones that they're really keying in on, and maybe one of those smoke screen kids. So the fact that Vancouver that we know of took out 5 is a fairly high number. I don't think it's completely outrageous, but it does give a bit of an indication for the spot that they're at, that there's going to be a lot of variance of who's going to be there, right? So they're probably trying to cover their bases, and they want to test these guys. They want to see if they get nappies, they get desserts, like what's going on out here.
Yeah, don't order the big gluttonous, indulgent dessert.
Right?
Not at Rick Tockett's table. Yeah. You best not. You mentioned Redshot defenseman. There's 2 there they didn't take to dinner, but Axel Sandin-Pellikka and then David Reinbacher. Can you give me your capsules there as well?
Yeah, so Reinbacher, he's the top D in the class for most outlets. We have him 11 on our board, and I have him 10 on mine. Sorry, 9 for me. And, big right shot defenseman, played pro minutes, mean. Like, he looks for the hit all the time, finishes in the corner. Like, he's mean for sure. Great skater. Not a ton of offensive upside, I wouldn't say at this point, not obvious offensive upside, but, we've said that before with kids. Condre Miller, Mo Sider didn't look like he was going to have a lot of juice to his game, and so some of these guys take a little bit of time. I think he's a good player. I think he's a legitimate top 12 asset, and I think he's going to be gone way before Vancouver picks at 11. I have a feeling he's gone by 5.
Wow.
So that's probably why they didn't take him out for dinner, because it's just teams can't help themselves. Even if there's better forwards available behind that are sitting there, they're going to lean Reinbacher, I think, early on, just because it's like you can't get big, mean, mobile right shot defensemen any other way than in the draft or paying through the nose in free agency when they're 30. So I think he's gone. Axel Sandin-Pellikka, I really like him. I really like the way he plays the game. He's a lot of fun. He's really 4-way mobility. He's creative. He can walk the line. He can get shots through. He can transition the puck. He showed at the U18s that he can handle some defensive responsibility too against his age group. But I just keep coming back to the fact that this kid is undersized, not an elite mover, and isn't good enough offensively to really run a top power play unit. And so now you're looking at a second power play type of guy that you might have to shelter at even strength a little bit for the first half of his career. Yeah. And there's not a ton of value there. So for me, he's 16 on my board. Pulling him up at EP. We got him at 15 at EP. And I think that's fine. I think that he's if he goes, and he will probably go in that range, that's an okay spot for a team to gamble on him. But, he's not Erik Karlsson, who went 15 or 16 that year, right?
Last question here, Cam. We've heard a lot of talk about potentially trading down as a means of shedding a contract in Chicago at number 19, looking to jump up. Give me the difference between 11 and 19, your list, EP ringside, and whether or not you think that would be wise if it helps the Canucks in other areas.
I think it would be wise if they could truly unload some bad cap. You flip that 11 for 19, and maybe you get something else too, right? Maybe you get another pick tossed in there. Maybe you get like a B or C level prospect, something a little juicer, because the only reason Chicago's doing it is because someone's sitting there at 11 that they really, really like, that they know won't be there at 19. So number one, I wouldn't make that deal until pick 10. Because I want to know who's sitting there. Because if Zac Benson's sitting there, there's no way I make that trade. If Matt V. Mishkov's sitting there, there's no way I make that trade. But, if all these guys that they took out for dinner are still there, which could very well be the case, maybe Benson's gone. Let's say Benson's gone and the rest of them are sitting there. you can slide back and you'd be like, we're going to get one of these at 19. And then you're feeling okay about yourself. Now you've settled an issue where you move some cap space that they desperately have to do. Maybe you accrued a late second as well that you can throw a dart at, and you get a player you like. I think that there's value in that too. But yeah, I wouldn't be moving that pick before I saw who was there, because like I said, teams can't help themselves. There's going to be some D that are reached upon, and that means some forwards are going to fall.
Okay, let's go.
They could be.
Let's stay in the theoretical. And Cam Robinson's the GM of the Canucks. You slide down to 19 because you love so-and-so who nobody else loves quite like you. Who's that player that that a lot of people have got in the mid-20s that you want to you'll have no problem sliding down to 19 because you know he'll still be there. Who's that?
I don't know 100% if he'll still be there, but the easy answer for me is Dimitri Simichev.
Yeah.
And I have him as the top blue liner in this class. And I think that he could be had potentially at 19. I think a smart team's going to grab him before that, maybe 16, 17, 18. I look at Calgary. I think that they're not going to be dumb enough to walk past him. But this kid is 6'4". He skates like the wind. He has great elusive ability on the retrievals. He's good at the net front. He's got a good rush defense. He played, nearly half his season in the KHL, defending against KHL forwards. That's no easy feat when you're 18 years old. To me, and I mentioned this already, is Keandre Miller. He looks very much like Keandre Miller to me at the same time. This just raw, athletic, awesome skater who can have this big upside. And if it doesn't come, if the offense doesn't come, you still got yourself like an all-world stopper on your second pair potentially here. So I think the elevation that he could bring to a team and organization, sure, he's on the left side, but who cares? Like, he's a real player who should be going in the top 10 and won't be.
Where is he on your list, Cam?
I've got him number 8 on my board.
And where's the EP rank on him?
We've got him 9 at EP, but everybody else has got him for the most part in the teens.
Yes.
Some public boards have him in the 40s. It's a pretty wide range.
What's the contract there? How long is he in Russia? Do you know?
Good question. I think he's got one more year under contract off the top of my head, but something we can check into.
So available before Minchkov, likely. Love the draft talk, buddy. Great hearing your voice again. Can't wait for a couple of weeks from now, and awesome that you'll be riding with us again this year. Appreciate this, Cam.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on, fellas.
This clip brought to you by Whistler Golf Club. If you have a group of 12 or more, the group organizer plays for free. Inquire now at whistlergolf.com/groups.